I'm reading this incredible book called Harmonic Experience by W.A. Matthew. And in the book, there's this line that's really been stuck in my head. The book's about harmony and music in general. And the author says that learning music is much like walking up a mountain in a spiraling fashion, where each time you circle the mountain, you get a little bit higher up, and the views are the same each time, but from a greater perspective. So you see the forests first from the ground, and you see the branches are above you. But then as you get higher, you start to see how broad the forest is, and you see other hilltops, and clouds get closer, and your perspective broadens. But you keep returning to the same sites. So we keep returning to harmony, and we keep returning to the basic intervals. Okay, so you know your seventh chords, you know your inversions, you know all your modes. Let's say you've done all of college harmony or something, and you've gone really far. That doesn't mean there's nothing left to learn. We need to keep returning to the basic materials from new perspectives. And I've been thinking about harmony in a slightly different way lately, and I wanted to share this one thought process with you that I think will yield a lot of beautiful results. I want to look at forming chords like mixing colors together to form new colors. Specifically, I want to look at taking one interval, mixing it with another interval, and forming a chord that way, and observing the way that a new color forms. So for example, let's take a perfect fifth between C and G. C, G. Now I'm going to combine that perfect fifth with other perfect fifths to get a chord, and I want to just notice how that C, G fifth changes color, changes shape when I add another fifth to it. So first, let's hear C, G against another lower C, G. Just pay attention to how it feels to you. I don't want to mess with it. But let's hear the next fifth, a half step up, will be C sharp to G sharp. See how this super stable C-G is transformed? And it's a usable chord. In traditional contemporary, I guess, music theory, you would call that something like a C sharp major 7 sharp 11 with no third. But on another level, you might think of it as the color of a perfect fifth darkened in this really dramatic sort of royal way. But you come up with your own subjective terms. Now I'm going to just keep going through all the fifths, and I'm not going to talk. I'm going to shut up so you can listen. Here we go. There were only 2 pairs of fifths in there that I thought were like so murky that it felt sort of like when you mix all the colors together and you get like a sludgy color that's maybe useful for shadows and useful for the darkest parts of a painting, but not necessarily the color that you would use all over the place to make things pretty. And those particular intervals were when I mixed C and G with F sharp, C sharp. I thought that one was really tough. And then when I mixed it with B, F sharp. And if I do that down an octave, I think the reason why those are so gnarly is pretty clear. If you do F sharp, C sharp against C, G, you're doing tritone on top of tritone, but they're like a perfect fifth apart, so it's just kind of awkward, and yeah, you end up with a minor ninth between the F sharp and the G, which I think is the hardest interval to make good. Not to say that you can't. You totally can, but it's just really dissonant. And the other one that was problematic, the B, F sharp, that's just a lot of minor ninths happening. Just as I was saying, that's a dissonant interval, B to C, F sharp to G. So those are really murky colors, but you've got colors like C, G against E, B. Wow. Now that ends up being a C major 7, but when it's voiced this way, it might not remind you of the C major 7 you're maybe used to. To me, it takes on a really different form in this particular inversion. And so you can catalog it as C major 7 and use it as C major 7, but I would argue it's still a really different chord than just any other C major 7, for example, but when we get you've got a really distinct C major 7 there. So even if you've learned a lot about C major 7, each way that you come to C major 7, whenever you are forming C major 7, can change your C major 7 or your view on C major 7 in general. I really like C sharp, G sharp against C, G, especially when you resolve it down. So I'm going to do a little improvising now that we've got some of these colors. I recommend trying this out. If you've got a keyboard you can use, just one set of fifths in the right hand, one set of fifths in the left hand. If not, you can do it in a DAW just by punching in notes. And if you don't have that, you can use a guitar. If you just do power chords stacked on power chords, maybe even use 2 fingers from your right hand and 2 fingers from your left hand. It gets to be a little tricky, but you can do this with any interval. I started with fifths because I really have been feeling fifths lately. But you could do this with your thirds, you could do this with your fourths and your fifths. Just combine one interval with another and think of it as mixing colors and sort of catalog your results in your head. How do these chords feel when they move from one to the next? And that's a big thing, is not only are you recoloring your chord by adding one interval to another, the order of chords over time changes how each one feels. So this to this makes a drastically different rule for what this first one represents than if you go. They just feel like this chord embodies a different sort of personality when you move it up versus down like that. So there's a lot of subjectivity to your experience of music and, what things this and that remind you of. And that can be hard to explain in YouTube lectures. The subjective element of music isn't as easy to break down as the theory system I did in the Music Theory for the Ground Up series. But this is a way of thinking about theory that I think is super valuable, and I'm excited to learn more. And I hope that this was a nice brainstorm inspiring thing.